Carter Baxter, and I'm the daughter of Paul J. Brown, who was a longtime grocer on the Hill. When he started in the 1920s as a little boy, he worked alongside of his grandfather, Silas Wilford, in the store. And at that time, the property was located on 110 Locust Street, which is now 31 Locust Street. And he worked there, and there was a hiatus where he went into service in around 1917, and then returned to Easton and continued in the store, working alongside of his grandfather, who became ill. And then he and his two brothers, the Ponies, Robert and Russell Pony, became partners with him, and the store was called Brown and Pony. He kept the store on Locust Street for over a span of about 25 years. And then he moved to Port Street. And there the store remained until his health started to fail in the 60s. But my father always loved Easton. When I was a little girl, I used to talk with him, and I just wondered to myself why he was so fond of Easton. But you could feel it. It was something, that you could feel. And one thing I can say, everybody in the whole neighborhood was close. We all looked out for each other, and you looked out for each other's children. And we just had a grand time, didn't we, Rosalie?
Yes.
And her mother, Mrs. Elizabeth Sewell, she'll tell you about her mom, used to take in people who could not stay at the Tidewater Inn. Blacks who could not stay at the Tidewater Inn were recommended to her home for lodging. And she once had a lady to stay there, and she was the authentic Aunt Jemima. I have her picture here that Mrs. Sewell took when she lodged with her. This happened somewhere in the 40s. And she came there with a group from Chicago. And as I said, the group stayed at the Tidewater. She stayed at Mrs. Sewell's home. Mrs. Sewell took in a lot of people who otherwise would not have had comfortable places to stay, in the early 20s and 30s. I left around 44. But nevertheless, I can sit here and say that my father had very good memories of Easton, and yet he had a lot of hardships. But he had good friends, and he always looked at the best, tried to look at the best side of people, get the best out of them. My father was a great person. And in the 50s, he was the first black person. In other words, he was invited to become a member of the Talbot County Chamber of Commerce in Easton. That was sometime in the 50s. And we were all very proud of that. And by the way, today would have been his 119th birthday. He was born June 14th, 1894. And today he would have been, isn't that something?
It's amazing.
Amazing, isn't it? Right. So, if you want me to say, I do know a few businesses that I grew up around. The Raisin family, they had, Mr. Norman Raisin had a barber shop on Aurora Street for years, starting back in the early 20s. And the Raisin family also had a restaurant and a taxi service. And there was a Mr. Downs who lived on Higgins Street next to the church. He also had a taxi service. And Mr. Joe Bantam had the upholstery business on Higgins Street. Mr. Dick Nixon had a small restaurant that was there for years, starting in the 30s. There was a Mr. Charlie Pritchett, who was a very nice. He was old when I was a young girl. He was old then, but he was always nice to children. But he had a cleaning service, cleaning and pressing service, and he could cook. And on the weekends, he cooked scrumptious food and sold it to the public. And Mr. Louis Copper, who was a brick mason, he lived on the lower part of Locust Street.
And don't forget to tell him that he built our porch, and it just looked just like new.
Today, right?
Yeah, today. He was a beautiful one.
Yeah, he did nice work. Let me see who else. Mr. Charlie Pritchett. Okay, and my stepmother, Laura Brown, had a beauty shop at Locust Street. After my father moved the store to Port Street, she had a beauty shop there for a span of, I think she started in 1933, and she worked in the shop until the late 50s or 60s. And she was a graduate of the Apex School of Beauty in Montclair, New Jersey. She did excellent work. Anybody that knows around the road, we can vouch for the fact.
Yes, and nowadays they don't do hair like they used to. They don't use no oil, just go on and do it and wash your head.
But Mrs. Clara Stanley came to Easton on the same street. My mother was on one end of Locust, and Mrs. Stanley was on the opposite, on the same street, but Mrs. Stanley was on the corner of Locust and South Lake, right? She came there in the 40s. So these were some of the people around who were busy working, trying to make a living, just really make it. And in the meantime, they still looked out for the children. Everybody was very, very close.
Everybody raised their children, not like they did these days and times. They would speak to them, and the children would do just what the older person told them to do.
So my father always, as I said, loved Easton. And I'm very happy about this Hill project. And I think a lot of good things are going to come out of this. And I hope that I live long enough to see things progress. Okay?
If you two, ladies, wouldn't mind giving us your age.
I am 87 years old. I was 87 years old April the 6th. I was born April the 6th, 1926. And thank God I can sit here and say that you were Harriet Lau.
I'm Rosalie Gale. I'm Rosalie Sewell Gale. And I'm 91 for March the 12th, 1922. And the Lord just been wonderful to me because I'm alone and I have lots of friends.
Yes.
Lots of friends.
Yes, you do.
And I belong to Bethel Church, and I'm always one of the oldest ones there. And my mother had a breakfast, I call breakfast, and what do you call breakfast?
Bed
Bread
breakfast.
and breakfast.
That's what I said before.
Yeah.
Black people sit bread and bread.
Yeah, but no, and hotel people, they didn't allow them, the black people, to stay there. So they had to find a place to stay themselves. So mother, she opened our house and we had that, and they stayed there here. And always so much, honey, that I could say, but I'm not a talker. So, and my sister, she done slip covers and draperies, and she worked for Hayden and Spencer and Atkinson, that was on Dover Street. she made silk covers and draperies for a lot of the rich people in Talbot County.
She made sails for the yachts?
No,
yachts
no,
and-
she didn't make sails, she just made the silk covers.
Oh, I thought she made sails.
No, baby. Mr. Joe Banner, he made sails. But
Okay.
now you go into sales, that's in Oxford.
Yeah, Curtis Downs
Curtis
and his
Downs.
brother.
I beg your pardon, I thought she made sails, but she did excellent upholstery work.
Oh, yes, yes. And, so she had that little shop in the back. Mother had built a little shop in there. And she used alter clothes and things like that.
Miss Rosalie, do you still live in the same house?
I lived in the same house I was born in,
And what's the address?
29 South Locust Lane, Easton. They said lane, but I went up to the courthouse and they told them it's no lane. Mine's called street. And but they didn't do nothing about it. But I was told there wasn't no lane. And we had the same telephone number we always had.
You still have the same telephone number?
What?
Yeah. So it's really a lot of history on Locust Street. And I had I had two children. Kathy, she passed in 1906, and I have a son that has a business called Sam's Service. I imagine you see his sign of trucks and everything going around. And he rents tents and chairs, tables, and all that.
Miss Rosalie, and Miss Marie, what was it like when you were in school? Where did you go to school? The elementary school?
Easton
The
Elementary School,
the elementary school was on Port Street.
4th Street. And we went rain, shine, wind or blow, snow. You just walk to school, and then Phillips on the corner there was Phillips store, and you went past the Phillips store, and then you go and you
Went down the
down
hill.
the hill.
Went down the hill.
And sometimes you would, we're almost slide down the hill because you had to go to school with rain, snow, ice and everything. And the children have it really easy nowadays going to school. The bus will pick you up and carry you up to school and bring you back. We didn't have that. We had an old-fashioned buses that brought your country children in. And if it was bad, they couldn't come in.
Did your elementary school have a high school too, or?
He went as far as, you only had 3 years of high school
And where was your high school located?
on Port Street.
4th Street.
Was it all in the same building?
All in the same building.
The high school was in one building and the elementary was in a separate building as you entered, came up the wall. The elementary school was to the left and high school was to the right. But I can say here that I wasn't too proud of some of the way some of the school books were presented to us because some of them had pages missing. That's why these children
Writing
don't
all
know,
over the books.
because they came from the white school.
Oh, you got books from the white
White
school?
school. We didn't get
Sometimes
them,
you would be reading something and turn it to the next page and the next page. May not have been there. You know, well, kids are blessed today, they don't have to go through those kind of things.
In your community, which is called The Hill, did you, were most of your shopping and purchasing and everything you did, was it all done right in your community, or did you go to the stores outside of your community?
Only as far as what we call uptown, up to Dover Street, or Dover Street and uptown. Uptown would be Washington Street. We did like, when you wanted a little fancy dress or something, you would go up to, on Washington Street, some of the shops.
But we had to go to, it wasn't a high price store, no way.
And there was the A&P on Dover Street, and my father, as I said, had his store.
What kind of store did your father have?
It was a grocery store. He sold meats and